I just released my first game ever on Steam, and it's called Trivia War. But let's rewind a little bit and talk about how we got here. So like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and strap in. So the next time you see me on this channel, it will likely be to tell you that Trivia War is released. The next few steps after that weren't so easy. I still had a whole lot of game left to complete. Not a single attack animation was made, there's a serious bug on the windscreen, the question list wasn't done, the player avatars weren't looking good, and a whole lot of juice missing. Not to mention, I hadn't even passed Steam approval. So that was actually my first goal, to get that approval. I figured that I need to get the game to a decent state, meaning that worst comes to worst and I didn't make my deadlines and the game was released, it would still be fully functional, albeit incomplete. But also to pass Steam review, your game basically has to be 95% complete. So the priority list was completing the settings screen, finishing the question list, and finally a small tutorial. Originally, the game didn't actually support different resolutions. So of course I had to change that. I wrote a few functions that not only handles resolutions, but makes you choose a supported aspect ratio. Easy enough. The question list was actually already pretty long, something like 3.6 thousand questions. But I promised 5K, so I needed to deliver on 5K. I found several trivia databases online, and I basically wrote several Python scripts to clean up the files and generate the JSON I needed to import into the game. But this was still pretty time consuming. In all, it took me about 2 days, but I had to have some family time, so obviously I was a little distracted. I needed to make sure that I wasn't overfilling certain categories. Video games already had 800 questions, for example, so it didn't need any more. My goal was to have 200 questions per category, minimally. In the end, I didn't actually get to that magic number, but I did hit my 5,000 total. Part of the struggle was the game was originally designed to have shorter questions and shorter answers. Every question has to be a very specific format, and the Python script I wrote wasn't filtering as well as I thought it was. So several times I had to rerun the files. But I made it happen. The last thing to do was to provide some type of tutorial. I am notoriously bad at tutorials, always have been. But I thought about something that my buddy William said to me, which was that I should try to do what Nintendo does. Less words and more showing the users how to play. So what I came up with was this little graphic that rotates around and shows you all the ways that you can answer. The game is simple, just choose the direction of the choice you want to pick. This is a very common format in trivia style games, so I'd say it's pretty intuitive. Once I was done, well, now it's Steam build time, right? Wrong. I completely forgot about mouse input, and I still had to generate a working Linux build. Okay, so Trivia War is my first game in Love 2D and my first prototype in Love 2D. So admittedly, some parts of it are pretty poorly designed. That includes the UI. Everything is very manual. I'm not using any libraries whatsoever. And the game was originally designed to be entirely controlled by your keyboard or your controller. Thankfully, I came up with a decent solution for that. When I make the UI, I have to give it arguments on how big a button should be and where it should be. I have to tell it the width, the height, the X, the Y. So I had the thought, if I have this global table of buttons and I know the positioning and the size, I could just check where the mouse is on the screen to see what button that I'm currently on. And I could use my current indexing system, which is how I highlight and know where everything is and what people are clicking on. And thankfully, this worked. I had to add in a few hacks here and there that leads to some quirky behaviors, but nothing too serious in my opinion. I did not have nearly as much success with the Linux build. The build tool I use for Love 2D is called Make Love. And honestly, it's really awesome. I'd recommend it to everybody. I was able to configure it in a way that Windows builds pop out perfectly with no additions needed by me, and Mac builds I only have to make one change. So to make Linux builds with Make Love, you actually need to be running Linux. So I spun up a VDE, I installed Ubuntu, updated it, installed it, added all the tools that I needed to add, got the game onto the VDE, fixed the path because I installed the Python packages wrong, tried to build, and I just couldn't get it to work. So it was at this point that I decided native Linux support was just gonna have to wait. I just didn't have that kind of time. So the next step was configuring and making Steam builds, which there is documentation for. Honestly, it's a whole lot of yapping here, and my undiagnosed ADHD was not helping me focus. But here's the short of it. If your game zipped is under 2 gigabytes, you can just upload a zip file of your game. And you need to tell Steam how to open your game, which in this case for me, on Mac, it's just triviawar.app, and on Windows, it's triviawar.exe. Easy peasy. A lot of Steam's documentation is just a little old, including this video of them showing you how to upload builds on Windows 7. So, If your game is small like mine, I'd probably just skip that. Now to submit the game for review, and I'm sure it's perfect. Oops, Steam found some errors, and also just some things they don't like. I labeled one of the game languages wrong, easy fix, and Steam Cloud isn't working, which I was kinda hoping they just wouldn't notice. But it turns out that's a relatively easy fix too. You can just set Steam to look for the location of your same file and it just syncs it all. So that's exactly what I did. I also did address everything else on their list with the exception of one thing, the default controller configuration. Because once again, the Steam documentation isn't fantastic. I make another build, re-upload, and within like 3 hours, my game was approved. And I'll be honest, I shed a tear. I really didn't realize the emotional weight of this milestone. But being game dev sometimes comes with a level of imposter syndrome. But a Steam release is super validating. And the fact that I'd be able to do one in the timeline that I wanted, it kind of shook me. But I still had work to do. Windscreen actually had several bugs with Team 1 logic. I knocked that out pretty fast, but there was still a really big bug on the windscreen. The star effect that I use on the immunity screen and formerly on the windscreen was actually really inefficient. The stars are created on the fly and they randomly generate. Running it continuously on the windscreen was just causing crazy slowdown, especially if more than one was on the screen at a time. So in the end I scrapped it. The windscreen still needs more juicing, but I think it's fine overall without it. The last and final hurdle is player avatars and player attack animations. The robots were always placeholders. I knew I needed something better and I didn't think I should be the one to create it. But the few artists I reached out to were well out of my budget or they just completely ghosted me. So I had to do it myself. I inspired my avatars off of the game Two Dots. Two Dots has these lovely little characters that are way better than mine, but you know, I made do. I used the skills that I picked up over the years to make these 4 avatars. Ollie, Jack, Melvin, and Susie. I actually wanted to add more avatars, but you know, deadline. And now for the final part, animations. This was difficult for me. I, for one, needed to learn how to use sprite sheets properly in Love 2D. Shout out the Animate library. I needed to time the sequences in a natural way. I modified so many sound effects for this game. I modified and combined sprites to work for me, and ultimately I decided that the weapons should be boxing glove, baseball bat, anvil, grenade, and airstrike. So I made the individual animations, added sound effects and coloring to make them look more realistic, utilized scaling and easing to give them some life. So here's how all 5 looked when I was done. I think they turned out pretty well. After that, I just had to integrate the new file back into the game loop. I also added a few more animations. One for when you kick players and one for when you take group damage. But I was finally done. Are there more things I want to add? Of course, but that's for a future game update. So Steam doesn't actually review your future updates. Meaning all I had to do when I was ready is click the release button. So at 12:30 p.m. on February 10th, I did just that and immediately found a game-breaking bug. Because of course I would. I like to hide Easter eggs and cheat codes in all my games. And I was trying to future-proof and allow myself to add more later down the line. And I accidentally introduced a save file bug. The kind of bug that you would only see on a fresh install with a fresh and new save file. I tested fresh installs, but I forgot to delete the save file when I did so. It was very early, so no one downloaded it yet, so I was able to put out a hotfix, and we were back in business. So, as of recording this video, the game has been out 2 or 3 days. It's way too early to talk about sales, but considering this game cost me a whopping $0 to develop, you could say that I've made my money back. But I still need help. Steam basically doesn't care about your game at all until you've hit 10 reviews, meaning 10 people who bought the game themselves and wrote a review. Steam keys don't count, even if you bought it for a friend. So if you're watching this video, please go buy Trivia War and leave a review. It's actually on sale as a part of the Couch Co-op Fest and being launch week. I think it's a really fun game to play with family and friends. The feedback that I've gotten so far has been super positive, and you'd be supporting this channel and an indie game developer. And if you're still on the fence about the game, well, then you can just add it to your wish list, because that helps overall visibility. Links will be in my bio and the comments. As for what's next, there's a handful of features I still want to add to the game. And of course, there's still plenty of juicing to be had. I'm probably going to take the week to try to market the game a bit. The week after, I'll probably work on an update. And then finally a break? Maybe. We'll see. No matter what I end up doing, the best way to keep up and stay informed is by subscribing to the channel. I really want to make it to my goal of 1,000 subscribers, and you all can help me do that. Seeing this channel grow encourages me to be transparent about my game dev journey and spread all that information and lessons to you all. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for listening to me yap. Let me know what you think about the game. Let me know if you've been through the Steam process or what you think of it now that you're aware of it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out Trivia War on Steam. My name is Tez Fraser, and I will see you in the next one.